Hello. I recently turned 18, just back in June. However, although I can now, according to state law, buy cigarettes and vote, and buy knives apparently too, and tobacco, and all those amazing things that adults get to do, I'm afraid that I don't have anything profound to share with you today, or earth-shattering. In fact, I have something simple. When I was a little kid, I thought that my parents were perfect. I thought they knew everything. In fact, I thought that at some point in their lives, they'd been given a book that told them exactly what to say and when to say it and made sure they would never make any mistakes. It turns out I was wrong. My parents have lots of flaws. In fact, I thought that they had been living life with some kind of guideline, but it turns out they're winging it. Now this was a very terrifying revelation for two reasons. First, because it meant that the people who'd been making my life decisions and limiting the amount of candy I got to eat could be wrong. And second, because it meant when I turned 18, I wouldn't be given a book. I wouldn't be told exactly what to say and when to say it, and I wouldn't have the insurance that I would never make another mistake in my life. But I got over it. I sighed in relief. I'd passed that obstacle, I'd hurdled it, and you know what? I'd grown up and I was okay. But that is not how life works. Even though I could accept that my parents had flaws, I couldn't allow myself to believe that maybe I wasn't perfect. My entire life, I'd created certain pictures of myself. And when I found out that maybe I wasn't exactly the way that I thought I was, it freaked me out. See, I'd always thought that I was going to be just like Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. Beautiful, witty, smart, intelligent, amazing. But it turns out I'm actually a lot more like Mr. Darcy, proud, stubborn, and a tiny bit socially awkward. See, I'd always thought that I was going to be just like Lara Croft, a video game girl. She was from Tomb Raider, a badass, strong, and really sexy. But it turns out I'm a lot more like Ron Stoppable from a kid's show, Kim Possible, clumsy, foolish, and way too occupied with food. And see, I'd always wanted to be Melanie from Gone with the Wind. I'd read about her. She was kind, she was sweet, and she was caring. But it turned out I was actually a lot more like Scarlett O'Hara. Selfish and very determined to get what I wanted. Now, these things, although I could have accepted them in everybody else around me because it was okay for them to be imperfect, I couldn't do it with myself. So when I started high school, I told myself, okay, maybe you're not perfect now, but you can be perfect in the future. I went to school, I worked hard, I took all of the really hard classes, I joined clubs, I did activities, I made lists, which we found out today is not very good. You're not supposed to make lists. But I did. I made lists, and guess what? I was not perfect. And I wasn't happy either. And one of those nights, when I was working really hard at 2 a.m. in the morning because I'd pushed back an English essay, I found myself asking those inevitable questions of, what's the point? Why am I here? And why do I even care this much about school anyways? It was then that I decided to have an epiphany. Maybe it's more important to try and be happy than it is to be perfect. So I stepped back. I spent more time with my family. I thought more about my passions. I read books. I'd take long walks. I really enjoyed the small things in life. And do you know what? I still wasn't happy all the time. In fact, I was far from perfect, and I wasn't happy, and I found that I still had that urge to be perfect too. So what had I really solved? See, the problem was that I had thought of happiness like perfection, but it turns out that it is just as hard to be happy all the time as it is to be perfect. And that brings me to the simple thing that I promised to tell you about today. When I get upset, I tend to spiral. I don't know if any of the rest of you do this. But it can start with something simple, like my parents saying, Rosie, maybe it's not a great idea to go to the midnight Star Trek Into Darkness the night before you have an AP test at 8 in the morning that could decide your future. You don't understand me, I'll holler back at them, trying to get them to see that watching Kirk and Spock battle evil at 3D at 1 in the morning is way more important than my education and future. From there, I'll start crying, and I'll spiral into this sobbing pit, and I'll start questioning myself as a person again, and start wondering about that whole perfect thing. And then I do the simple thing. I start by crying. I cry a lot. I just let it all out. And then I step back. I stare at the wall for a while, or the ceiling, or I listen to a particularly deep song and just let it kind of all stew. And then I tell myself one thing. Rosie, you've only got 80 or so years on this planet. You might as well try and enjoy them. Now, sometimes this works, and sometimes it doesn't. As you might have gathered from my talk, I don't do perfect, so I do not have a perfect solution for you. But I do know that there are times in life when I am going to feel very sad, and there are times in life when I'm going to make terrible mistakes, and there are times in life when I'm going to make a fool of myself, and there are times in life where I'm going to mess up. And at those times, it helps me personally to have something that I can say that puts it all back into perspective, that reminds me that in this moment, even if I do mess up, it's not the end of the world. There is no perfect goal out there that I have to become to be happy. And it's okay if I'm not happy all the time, too. That is what I use to deal with this very tumultuous grown-up world that I've just found myself entering. Now, many of you have been in this world a lot longer than I have. So you probably have your own solutions at this point. Maybe you get up every morning and you put your feet on the ground and you say, today is going to be a great day. Or maybe when things start speeding up, you tell yourself to slow down. Or maybe there really is a book and you guys are all just keeping me out of the loop. Or it could be that all of you are perfect. And if that is the case, please share your secret with me, because I really want to know it. But if any of you ever feel unhappy or downhearted, or your parents just don't understand you because they don't get how amazing Star Trek is, then please feel free to use my utterly imperfect solution. Thank you very much. Thank you.